99 to 110. And this section that we are studying now, and we studied last time as well, and we're going to, like, then up to another maybe 35 verses, and the last 12 verses that we did. So all these verses are very philosophical in nature, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining the real meaning of Vedanta to the Mayavad sannyasis. So as we read last time, that the Mayavad sannyasis, they were very pleased by how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described his experience of chanting the holy names and his attaining a state of Krishna Prema. He was experiencing ecstatic symptoms, and when he described this to the Mayavadis were very, very moved by his experience and how he related that experience to the Mayavadis. And they said that, yes, we are very pleased by this explanation. बहुत अच्छा लगा, लेकिन there's one doubt. And what is that doubt? Or what is the question that they had in mind? Huh? Yes. So they said that this is in 101. He says, Vedanta na suno kyano tara kiba dosh. So why don't you hear Vedanta and discuss Vedanta? What is the fault with Vedanta? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very humbly, he said that, if you don't mind, then please allow me to speak something on the Vedanta. And he began in these few verses, verse number 106, 107 and 108. He explains that what Vedanta is and how Vedanta should be understood. So what did he say? What is Vedanta? What did he say in 106? He says that Prabhu kahe Vedanta Sutra Ishvara Vachana. Prabhu kahe Vedanta Sutra Ishvara Vachana. Vyasa Rupe Koilo Jaha Shri Narayan. Vyasa Rupe Koilo Jaha Shri Narayana. So Vedanta Sutra are the words of whom? By the Supreme Lord Himself. And how are they the words of the Supreme Lord? Because the Lord Narayan, in the form of Vyasadeva, in his incarnation as Vyasadeva, he compiled the Vedanta Sutra. And what are the Vedanta Sutras? These are formulas. No, these are codes. You can say very shortened, codes or aphorisms they're called, that are very, short in nature, but they capture or encapsulate the essence of all the philosophical texts in the Vedas, especially the Upanishads. So they capture in 555 verses, they capture the essence of all the philosophical explanations or the sections of the Vedic literatures. So you can imagine that's not an easy feat. We have such vast Vedic literatures, 4 main Vedas, and then they have different parts to them. There are 4 different parts, and then out of that, the Upanishads are the most philosophical parts. And to codify all of them and to encapsulate all the essence of what is being explained, that in a little sutras, 555 sutras. And what is the content of the Vedanta Sutra? Those basically there are three main things that are discussed in the Vedanta Sutra. And what is that? What is discussed in the Gita? It's discussed in the Bhagavatam. Yes, Abhideya. So, Sambandha Gyan, our relationship with the Lord. Abhideya Gyan, the process to revive that relationship. Okay. So you have Sambandha, what is our relationship with the Lord, and then Abhideya means a process of which to revive that relationship. And Prayojan is the ultimate goal. The platform that we all want to achieve through our practices of bhakti. The ultimate goal of all the practices of the process, that is called Prayojan Gyan. And because it is spoken by the Supreme Lord, He says that the defects of mistakes, illusions, cheating and sensory inefficiency do not exist in the words of the Supreme Lord. So that means that whatever is said in the Vedanta Sutra, it is beyond any defect. So it's absolutely accurate and pure. And the last thing that, one of the main things that we discussed last time, is the process by which the Vedanta Sutra must be understood. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained that we should take the direct meaning of the words in the sutra. And that is the right way to understand the sutra. So Mukhya Vritti She Artha Parama Mahatva. He says in verse number 108. He says that is the supreme glory of understanding the Vedanta Sutra. That we have to take the Mukhya Vritti. That means the direct meaning of those sutras. Because we can take words and also indirectly give some meaning to it. For example, like Prabhupada explained, the word Kurukshetra. So, Kurukshetra is meant to signify, or it's meant to explain a physical place where the battle took place between the Pandavas and the Kurus. But some people, when they are translating the word Kurukshetra, right, or giving the meaning, they're saying no, Kurukshetra refers to the body. And the 5 Pandavas, they refer to the senses. So different meanings that have been given and explained in many indirect ways, and not taking what Prabhupada explains as the dictionary meaning. So no dictionary you will find that Kurukshetra means this body, or the Pandavas mean this senses. So that is called Gana Vritti. That means indirect conclusions or speculative conclusions of the words in the Vedanta Sutra. And this is one of the things that we see, that the whole, the last 100, 200 years where the Bhagavad Gita has been translated, it's mostly been translated in an indirect way and in an impersonal way. That God, this Krishna is not actually God, it's just placeholder. So Krishna is not the absolute personality of Godhead as is claimed in the Gita, but Krishna means it's a placeholder, it's a name for the divine or the supreme, but the supreme is not Krishna. As Krishna says repeatedly throughout the Gita, he asserts his position as the ultimate truth. But then they give indirect meanings. And this is one of the main reasons that Srila Prabhupada, he's so strong in his Gita purports. Sometimes we say, why is Prabhupada, repeating, this message that this is indirect, it's not the right, explanation, and this has caused havoc in the culture. And he keeps repeating this message, and he keeps exposing the faults of these indirect meanings. Because for so many hundreds of Gita have been translated in an indirect way. Now to counter all these indirect explanations, Srila Prabhupada is very forceful in his purports in the Gita and throughout, even in the Chaitanya Charitamrita we will read right now, that he's very, very assertive that this indirect meaning or indirect conclusion of these words is what actually causes a big problem in the understanding of the scriptures. Okay?
Those who are giving this indirect, they are atheists or Mayavadis?
They could be both. Because there are people who translate also the Gita as scholars. So they may not believe in God, they translate. They may be Sanskrit scholars, they may be students of philosophy. So they could also translate.
So now the trend is people are more atheists or more Mayavadis?
Well, they're both. It's a mix of both.
You can call Mayavadis also atheists.
Well, we'll discuss this today. You hold that point. Because Prabhupada does call them atheists. But why? That we will they're atheists, but you could say they're indirect atheists. They're not like direct atheists, because they accept God, but they also assert that we can be God. And there's no difference between God and us, ultimately. So in that sense, they're atheists because they don't believe in a supreme Lord. Because if we can also be the supreme Lord, and we're all one, so in one sense, there is no supreme. We're all supreme. So in that sense, we're also atheistic. Okay. So just, setting the background for the discussion today, because today's session and the next session, Saurabh Prabhu, that is going to be a little philosophical. So we are back now. But after these two sessions, then maybe the next 20 sessions will not be so philosophical. So, the thing is, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is you get the tattva, but within the Leela. So, this is the difference between the Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat. So, Chaitanya Bhagavat, there is more Leela. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is great emphasis also on the tattva. So you see, this whole first volume of the first canto, the first 7 chapters, is very, very strongly establishing the tattva. There's very little Leela in what we have been discussing for the past 1 year. It's mostly philosophy. Who is Lord Chaitanya? Who is, why does he come? How is he the Supreme Personality of Godhead? What are his different expansions? Who is Lord Nityananda? Who is Advaita Acharya? Who is the Pancha Tattva? And what is their identity? What is their spiritual identity? So much explanation is there. But once this explanation becomes clear, then it becomes, how does that help us, when we read the Leela? How will that help us if we are clear on the tattva?
You can understand, you can enjoy, relish and understand.
Yeah, we can relish the Leela, and with the right understanding of who these personalities are. Another thing in the Leela is that we not mistake them as, ordinary humans. These are just, they're also having so much prasad, they're also, dancing and chanting like madmen. They're playing in the Ganga like children. Is this God, or, who are these personalities? So when we have the tattva clear, then we can appreciate the Leela also with more ras. Okay. So any questions or anything before we start today's session? Yes, Prabhu. Where's the other mic?
My question is about Mayavadi. When he read Bhagavad Gita, he read Mamevamsho Jivaloke,
Yes.
Attat Jnanapohanam Cha, and so in such kind of verses. When I read such verses, I wonder that how Mayavadi logically misinterpret it and present this logically deviated from the real philosophy that Krishna is the supreme personality of God. This is very hard to understand. That it is very clearly written, Matta Smrita Jnanam Apohanam Cha, and I am you are, every living entity is my Ansha, and it's very hard to understand.
So what if you make Krishna irrelevant? Then what happens to those statements?
Then they should not read Bhagavad Gita, they should concoct something else by touching Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, so but they like to do that. They make Krishna irrelevant. They don't give so much importance to Krishna. So all the statements like that, where Krishna is asserting his supremacy, they say actually it doesn't pertain to Krishna. Krishna is just a placeholder.
That I don't understand really how it is possible, because
Well, they can do that with words, and you can do anything. You can, if you are so expert like Shankaracharya, he's Lord Shiva. He's such a powerful personality, and so he was able to do that. He was able to twist and turn meanings of words and come up with all these indirect meanings, and still, interpret so many of the things in the Shastra.
fortunately, Guruji, I have entered in Prabhupada's world,
Yes.
not in their world.
So, okay. So let's start today with a very, very important verse. Okay. This verse is a very, very beautiful verse. Before we start today, in 110, we discussed last time, that was the last verse, that Shankaracharya is actually not at fault. Okay, even though he did these faulty interpretations and gave these indirect meanings, but personally he's not at fault. Why? Why is he not at fault?
By the will of the Lord he did.
Yeah, so he has been directed by the Lord. He's been directed by the Lord, and we read in the scripture last time in the, I think it's in the Padma Purana and the Shiv Purana, where he's been directly told that he should go and he should divert people back to the Vedas. And in order to direct or divert the people who have become Buddhists and atheists, and they've lost their trust in the Vedic literatures, because those people who claimed to be following the Vedas, they were engaged in many animal sacrifices and unnecessary type of yagyas in the name of the Vedic literature. And so people had lost their faith in Vedic literature. So his purpose was to guide them back and restore their faith in the Vedic literatures. And the way to do that was to do it in an indirect way. So those who had become so, captivated by Buddhist philosophy and by other atheistic philosophies, so how to attract them back is to give some indirect interpretation and sort of direct them back to the Vedic literature. Okay. So now we'll start with 111. Okay. This is a very, very significant verse that we should memorize. ब्रह्म शब्द मुख्य अर्थ कहे भगवान, चेतैश्वर्य परिपूर्ण अनुर्ध्व समान. ब्रह्म शब्द मुख्य अर्थ कहे भगवान, चेतैश्वर्य परिपूर्ण अनुर्ध्व समान. So according to the direct understanding, Brahma, the absolute truth, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Arth kahe Bhagavan. So he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Chit Aishwarya Paripurna. He's full of all spiritual opulences. Paripurna means he's full of. He's completely full of spiritual opulences. And there is no one equal or greater than him. So this is such a beautiful explanation. This is like a wonderful sutra itself, this verse. The description of what is the absolute truth. What is Brahma? So Brahma is who? He is Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kahe Bhagavan. And Bhagavan means what? He's full, paripurna of what? Chit Aishwarya. He's full of opulences. And there is no one equal or greater than him. Isn't this a beautiful explanation? So Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that he quotes a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Right in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's explained that how, the absolute truth, how is it considered by the great transcendentalists? That it is understood as a non-dual substance, non-dual, that means there is no duality, known as Brahman, Paramatma or Bhagavan. And where did we discuss this in great detail? Do you remember discussing this? Huh?
Remember the concept, but where?
Where did we discuss this? Nityananda chapter. Very close, but a little off. So the second chapter, it's called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
An example of sun.
So in that chapter, Kaviraj Goswami, he started with this verse, but he established that Bhagavan is the source of whom? Brahman and Paramatma. Okay. So first he established that who is the source of the Paramatma and the Brahman? Bhagavan. Okay. Then he established who's Bhagavan?
Lord Chaitanya.
Who's Bhagavan? Huh? You're confused. Is it Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Is Krishna? What did he establish first? He established Krishna, how Krishna is Bhagavan. And then, so if Krishna is Bhagavan, and Bhagavan is the source of Paramatma and the Brahman, then Krishna is the source of?
Paramatma.
So Krishna is the source of Paramatma, Krishna is the source of Brahman. Okay? And then the last thing he established was Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. So if Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself, then Lord Chaitanya is the source of Brahman and Paramatma. Okay. So this is how you connect. And then it becomes very clear that these explanations, that they are being referred to, what is the significance and how do they make sense? Okay. So if this clarity is there, then it becomes easier to understand these philosophical sections. Otherwise, there's so much that Srila Prabhupada and Kaviraj Goswami have given. Kaviraj Goswami has restricted himself to a few lines and a few verses. But Srila Prabhupada's purports you see to these verses, my God, 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages, 4 pages, every verse. So let's try and today understand and appreciate what Kaviraj Goswami and Srila Prabhupada are giving us, and how expertly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains this. So text 112. Tahara vibhuti deha sabachita-kara. Tahara vibhuti deha sabachita-kara. Chit vibhuti achati tare kohe nirakara. Chit vibhuti achati tare kohe nirakara. So, Tahara vibhuti deha sab chit akar. That means everything about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual, including his body, opulence and paraphernalia. Mayavad philosophy, however, covering his spiritual opulence, advocates the theory of impersonalism. So they deny this spiritual opulence that the Lord possesses. So Prabhupada explains in great detail what does it mean that the Lord possesses spiritual opulences, that the Lord's opulences are spiritual in nature, including his body, his paraphernalia and his abilities. So Srila Prabhupada writes that he refers to the Brahma Samhita. And in the Brahma Samhita, what does Brahma say? That the Lord's form is what? Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. So the Vigraha is Sat, Chit and Ananda. So that means that it's completely opposite to the bodies that we experience in this world. In this world, what is the nature of the body that we possess? Then, Achit and Niranand. Isn't it? It's exactly the opposite. So, Prabhupada writes, in the material world, everyone's body is just the opposite. Temporary, full of ignorance, misery. So that's why sometimes this word Nirakar is used to explain that When we say God doesn't have a body, does it mean literally He doesn't have a body? He doesn't have a material body. So therefore, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sometimes described as Nirakar, this is to indicate He does not have a material body like ours. And then Prabhupada says that the Mayavadis, they don't accept that, that how God can have a body and how that body can be spiritual. Okay. So instead of allowing Krishna to have a spiritual body, they just deny that a person, that the truth could be a person with a body. So they say, no, the truth is then, it doesn't have a body, it is formless. It's devoid of any form. It's devoid of any body. It's devoid of any opulences. It's devoid of any abilities. Okay. So deny everything. Keep denying. Keep denying everything till you reach a point of nothingness, impersonalism. So Prabhupada writes that the Mayavadi philosophers do not know how it is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is formless. They simply advocate the one-sided view that the Supreme Godhead or Brahman is formless. So then Prabhupada explains that when in the Upanishads, it is described that the absolute truth as having no legs or no hands. Although this is an impersonal description, it does not mean that the absolute truth of Godhead has no form. But He has a spiritual form that is distinct from the forms of matter. Okay. And this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is establishing. That's what. And then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, what he does is, he shares many quotes from different Vedic literatures. And he quotes Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He says, Bhakti Vinod Thakur offers many quotes from the Vedic literatures. If one accepts the real or direct meaning of these Vedic statements, one can understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has a spiritual body, Satchit Ananda Vigraha. So then he quotes from different Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and this famous verse from the Brihad Aranakya Upanishad 5.1.1, that Purnam Adha Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate. So this is also from the Isha Upanishad. Okay. So this indicates that the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual. Even though He expands in many ways, He remains the same. And similarly, there are many other, so there's another verse that he says, Vichitra Shakti Purusha Purana. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original Purusha, has multifarious energies. Then he shares many verses from the Svetashvatara Upanishad. Many quotations he gives, and you can read these. There's one that it says that 6.8 Parasya Shakti Vividhaiva Sruyate. We can understand His opulence in different ways. That He has Parasya Shakti, He has unlimited Shakti or potency. And then in the Rig Veda it is said, Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. That Vishnu is the supreme, and those who actually learn it think only of his lotus feet. And then he quotes from other Aitreya Upanishad that it is said, Sa Aikshata, he glanced over the material creation, and then by glancing he created this material world. And Prabhupada says, thus many verses can be quoted from the Upanishads and Vedas which prove that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not impersonal. Okay. Let's discuss now verse number 113. So before we do that, Prabhu, you had a question?
You just, as you have mentioned the word Nirakar, and the Lord has not no form. But I have heard someone say that when there is a word start from that is Akar, not Nirakar is not its opposite. For example, if there is Avashyak, its opposite is Anavashyak. Similarly, when there is Asak, its opposite is Anasak. Not that. Similarly, Akar opposite should be Anakar, not Nirakar.
Okay.
Just want to mention.
So how does it relate to here, this point?
As it is saying that Nirakar is interpreted as that Lord has no form, but it is not opposite of Akar.
Okay.
It is not opposite of Akar.
So opposite of Akar would be?
Anakar.
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 Hare Krishna. So what is the meaning of Nirakar?
Not material.
Lord has no material form.
Yes. So does he have legs and does he have arms? But is he Nirakar? Yes, he is Nirakar. But he has legs, so what does Nirakar mean? That he doesn't possess a body like ours. He doesn't possess eyes like ours. He doesn't possess a hand like ours. Okay. So this is the real understanding of the word Nirakar. That his Akar is not like ours. Hare Krishna. Let us recite verse number 113. Chittananda te ho tara sthana parivara. Tare kohe prakrita satvera vikara. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of spiritual potency. Therefore his body, name, fame and entourage are all spiritual. So everything related with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether it's his name, whether it's his body, whether it's his fame or his parivar, right, entourage, they're all spiritual. But what do the Mayavad philosophers say? They say that due to ignorance, that they are all merely transformations of the mode of goodness. So form, the form of the Lord for the Mayavadis is what? It is a transformation of the mode of goodness. So the absolute truth being covered by the modes, and that is resulting in the form of the Lord. How does that sound to you? Everyone is shaking their heads. Okay, so there's another very long purport to this. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes that The Mayavad philosopher, due to ignorance, says that these are merely transformations of the mode of goodness. So one thing that Srila Prabhupada writes, that Krishna has two distinct energies. One is spiritual and one is material. So Prakrita and Aprakrita, or Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti. Okay. Now one thing is that spiritual energy and material energy. So does material energy have variety?
Yes.
Do we see variety in this world?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's unlimited variety, it seems. They say that like no person has the same type of
DNA.
DNA and something else.
Fingerprints also.
Fingerprint.
Eyes, like retina.
And one thing I was also reading last time, I think I shared that when you examine the grains of sand even, okay,
The molecular structure is
yeah, the structure is different. So there's so much variety. So there's so much variety in the material world. Does the spiritual world have variety? Should spiritual energy have variety? Why not?
Even more.
So, why not? Right? Why should we deny variety to the spiritual realm? But Mayavadis think that all variety is material. Okay, they cannot accept that spiritual variety. They can't accept that concept. So the Mayavad philosophers cannot understand that there are two prakritis or nature, material and spiritual. Then Prabhupada says, but one who's actually intelligent can understand them. Considering many varieties and activities in material nature, why should the Mayavad philosophers deny the spiritual varieties of the spiritual world? And this is because Srila Prabhupada says that unclean intelligence. In the Bhagavatam 10.2.3 he quotes Avashuddha Buddhaya. Avashuddha. That means that buddhi that has become unclean. Due to unclean intelligence or a poor fund of knowledge, the Mayavad philosophers cannot understand the distinction between material and spiritual varieties. And that's why they consider that all variety is material. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore explains in this verse that Krishna, this personality, Supreme Personality of Godhead or Absolute Truth, has a spiritual body that is distinct from material bodies. And the material mode of goodness has nothing to do with spiritual variety. Okay. So it's not that because there's an influence of the material mode of goodness that there is spiritual variety. No, that has nothing to do with spiritual variety. In fact, the modes, they never can act on the spiritual realm. Okay, because it's Krishna's realm. And by nature it is pure and it is untouched. Why it's pure? Because it's untouched by the modes, and there's no way that the modes can act on the spiritual Shakti of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada continues, he says, Mayavad philosophers, however, cannot understand clearly spiritual variety. Therefore they imagine a negation of the material world to be the spiritual world. Because in this world, what does variety do? What does variety do? Huh? Binds us, okay? Huh? It gives enjoyment, but what kind of enjoyment?
Attachment is like
It gives us temporary enjoyment. And ultimately enjoyment that is not befitting the soul. So if variety is creating illusion and giving temporary pleasures and illusory happiness, then the simplest thing is just deny variety when it comes to the concept of God. When it comes to the concept of the absolute truth, then the easiest thing to do is just deny variety. Because variety is the cause of all problems. It keeps us in Maya. It bewilders us. It makes us addicted to temporary pleasures. So if this is not working, then you have another variety. If this variety of sense enjoyment is not working, then, and that's what we become really expert at. Modern world is, we've used our intelligence to create so much variety. Varieties of illusory pleasures. During my stay in the US, as a student, I was always, like in awe in how much, varieties of entertainment are there in America. There seems to be, they just keep to be, on and on. So many forms of entertainment. Unlimited forms, almost. Of course, not unlimited, but they seem unlimited. And that's why people are always planning. When it comes to Wednesday, they're planning the weekend. From Wednesday onwards, the discussions all change. There's all focus. Okay, what are we going to do this weekend? We go here, go there, fly here, go to this place, go to this resort, try this cuisine, try that cuisine, try this theme park, try this. So many varieties. And we are doing a great job of creating same forms of varieties. So we've also gotten habituated to this. That okay, if this doesn't work, then let's try this out. So this is our innovative culture. And what is it doing? Yeah, it's entangling it. It's creating a web. And we're just strangling ourselves. So all this variety, but at the end of the day, what is looming on our heads? What's looming on our heads right now? Huh? Death is always looming. But now, in the modern world, what's looming on our head? Death in the form of what? War. Right? Economic crisis. All you hear is like, shh, as if doomsday is coming. Yes or no? I was reading it just before the session. I saw one that someone is saying 6 billion people are going to suffer from famine. Can you believe that? 6 billion. That's like more than half the population. Huh?
8 billion people.
Yeah. So that's a crazy figure. If that really happens. So all this variety, but at the end, we're badly stuck. How many of you are aware of what's going on in the world? Huh? You are? You're reading the news?
Yes.
Huh? How are you feeling? Huh?
Disgusting.
Insecure. Concerned. Depressed. That's not good if you're feeling depressed. We should be concerned, but we shouldn't be depressed. Because we are already aware that these things are not foreign to the material world. That when we focus only on material progress, when we focus only on material enjoyment and achievements, then this is bound to happen. And this keeps happening. You see so many great empires. They think they've gotten it, they become supreme, they become so powerful, and then what happens to them?
Collapse.
They collapse. So now let's discuss 114. तार दोष नाही तय हो आज्ञकारी दास आर जे शून्य तारे होय सर्वनाश So the Sarvanash is back. In fact, in this purport, Prabhupada actually quotes that other Sarvanash verse that was spoken to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya at the end of this purport. So although Shankaracharya is not at fault, but those who adopt this philosophy and who get enamored by this philosophy, what happens to them? They are doomed. And Srila Prabhupada, he writes a very, very long purport in this. So he says that Mayavad philosophers are very proud of exhibiting their Vedanta philosophy or Vedanta knowledge through grammatical jugglery. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Shri Krishna certifies that they are Maya Aprita Jnana, bereft of real knowledge due to Maya. And then Prabhupada describes that there are two types of Maya. One Maya is that which throws us into illusion. That is what is it called? It is called Prakship. Yes. So that is the form of Maya that throws us into illusion. And then there is another Maya that keeps us in illusion, that maintains illusion. And that is Avaranatmika Shakti. So both these groups, the Mayavadis, the impersonal Shankarites of Varanasi, and the Buddhists of Saranath, right? Both these, they don't agree with the spiritual existence of the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada writes, neither group agrees to accept the existence of a personal God. Thus both the Buddhists and the Shankarites are avishuddha buddhaya, or imperfect and unclean in their knowledge and intelligence. And then Srila Prabhupada quotes a Mayavad scholar, Sadanand Yogendra. And he's a very famous scholar who has written a book called Vedanta Sar. And this is accepted by the Mayavad philosophers. And Prabhupada writes that the followers of Shankaracharya philosophy attribute great importance to his statements. And then Prabhupada writes many, he writes a long paragraph. And then he says in simple language that it is the opinion of Sadanand Yogendra that since everything is nirakar or formless, the conception of Vishnu and the conception of the individual soul are both products of ignorance. So what does that mean? That the existence of personal God and the personal living entity, why is that occurring? Or why does that happen? Because of the influence of the three modes of material energy. Okay? Because of the influence of Maya. So he describes both collective and individual existence in darkness. According to Mayavad philosophers, the Vaishnava concept of the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and of the Jiva or individual soul as his eternal servant is a manifestation of ignorance. Okay. So they don't accept that. And Prabhupada says these are characteristics of asuras or demons. And that's why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his discourses with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, Jeevir nishtara lagi sutra koilo vyasa. Mayavadi bhashya sunile hoy sarvanasha. So Ved Vyasi composed the Vedanta Sutra to deliver the conditioned souls from the material world. But Shankaracharya, by presenting the Vedanta Sutra in his own way, has clearly done a great disservice to human society. And for one who follows his Mayavad philosophy is doomed. Sarvanash. So you can remember this word, Sarvanash Hoibe. If we get into Mayavad philosophy, then we can also become bewildered and lose our real spiritual understanding and our real spiritual taste. This one. So, in the last part of the paragraph, Prabhupada says that in the Vedanta Sutra, devotional service is clearly indicated. But the Mayavadi philosophers refuse to accept the spiritual body of the Supreme Absolute Person and refuse to accept that the living entity has an individual existence separate from that Supreme Lord. And that's why Prabhupada says that they have created havoc in the understanding, in the very nature of the transcendental process of devotional service. And this is very important, what Prabhupada is writing. The Mayavadi philosophers' unrealizable ambition. So this is an ambition that actually can never be realized. And what is that? To become one with the Supreme through denying the existence of the personality of Godhead results in a most calamitous misrepresentation of spiritual knowledge. And then Prabhupada writes that even though Mayavad philosophers, they may be honored as very learned scholars, ultimately they descend to the to the physical activities of politics, social work, etc. Because they can't, they get bored of nothingness. So ultimately they come down. And they get involved in all these philanthropic activities. Okay. So yes, we had a question.
My question is like, whatever these different Mayavadi interpretations are there, these are also done by so-called scholars.
Yes.
So their intelligence is also provided by the Supreme Lord Himself.
So, who is the source of everything?
The God.
Yes, so the Lord, Lord is providing everything we want.
But why God is giving intelligence to these people to misinterpret people through Vedas. There are other different ways. People are anyway bewildered. But now bewildering the people through Vedas, through this Mayavadi, now that 99.9% people are following Shankaracharya. So that means 99% are doomed actually.
Yeah, so why he does that? Because again, there's free will.
Free will is one, but because of all these demonic...
Yeah, but at least he got them back to the Vedas. And at least they have faith in the Vedic literatures. And then gradually, as Srila Prabhupada's mission keeps expanding, you will read in the purport. Yes. No, it's at least they're practicing some form of spirituality. They are.
So then they're not doomed.
They're doomed in one sense that, what does doom mean?
They will never be able to come out of the material existence. They will
The real doom is that for a long time they cannot experience devotional service to the Lord. Okay. They cannot have that exchange. That is what is Sarvanash. From the perspective of Kaviraj Goswami, from the perspective of Lord Chaitanya, to be bereft of that connection, that personal connection with the Supreme Lord, and to be denied the ras that one can experience and exchange with the personal Lord, I mean, that is doom. So even though one is spiritual and one is enjoying the impersonal Brahman, you could say the enjoyment of the impersonal Brahman, but what are they missing out on? What's the happiness of the Brahman compared to the happiness that we learnt in one of the verses?
It's like
that
0.001%.
It's like water in the hoof print compared to the ocean. So imagine if you wish someone well, do you want them to experience the ocean or that water in that hoof print?
Ocean.
Yeah, you want to give it all. And you want to experience, you direct them to the ocean. You don't say, hey, this, usme thoda sa pani hai, you can go and play in that.
That means all these people who follow these impersonal philosophies and all, so they will not be able to reach the goal of life, but they will be, good character, moral, ethics. So all
why not?
So that these people will maintain, and after maybe thousands and millions of lifetimes, they will somehow.
See, when you look at doom means suppose a devotee gets into Mayavad philosophy. So is he doomed?
For some time.
Yeah, definitely. Because when you're comparing, what you're going to get at the end of the day, you are doomed. So it's a matter of perspective. So from the matter of perspective of Lord Chaitanya and Kaviraj Goswami, definitely you're doomed. From the absolute perspective of the Supreme Lord, it is doom. It's a type of doom.
So this is like a filter which is created by the Supreme Lord, because then people will get stuck in that web of Mayavad. So some fortunate person who will be able to come out at the web. So it's a kind of filtering, right?
Well, I don't know if it's a filter or not, but it's not like a real, like when you say filter, it's not a filter in one sense, because it becomes very difficult to convince a Mayavadi to become a devotee. So filter, when we think that we are coming closer. But you could have someone who has no idea of Mayavad philosophy just surrender, so easily to bhakti. So
Follow-up question to what Prabhuji asked. So Shankaracharya, he was instructed by Lord to divert people because they were going in some other direction. But when the diversion was being created and he wanted. Why he did not wanted people to come this way and wanted to get into Mayavad? Why he wanted deceiving? I don't know if deceiving is the right word or not.
So
but
he wanted them indirectly connected back to the Vedas, in the sense that you're giving an extreme now. Someone who doesn't believe in a personal God, someone who doesn't believe in Vedic literature. Now suddenly you say, no, there is Vedic literature, there's a personal God, bhakti is the process. So it's too much for them to handle.
now this road is leading to Palestine.
So yeah, ultimately it will lead. It is one way of getting back. Maybe it's a longer route, but it is a way. And for that, you could say for that time period, this was appropriate. Okay. So again, Desh, Kal, and Patra, right? So taking the time, place, and circumstances into consideration, this seemed like a good way of reconnecting people. Right. Is that okay?
The Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita says two verses. One is Manusyanam Sahasrechu Kaschitati Tejjani. Then also he said Bhavanam Janmanayante Jnanavan Mam Prapati. And he's using word Jnanavan. Not anyone, but Jnanavan.
Yes.
So this is also indicating that it's very hard and
It's not so easy to be a devotee. Okay. Yes.
One question comes to my mind every time, like when people were killing animals on the name of Vedas, Lord came and he denied the Vedas. Instead of making the people understand the correct meaning of this, he gave some other meaning. Then he denied the Vedas and then came as Shankaracharya and confused the people more. For example, if I have kids at my home and they are following something wrong, I'll give them the correct knowledge instead of diverting.
But sometimes you have to divert them. Sometimes they don't accept. Right now your child is small, right? So they may easily accept. But wait till she grows up a little bit. कितने indirect चीजों से उनको बहलाना पड़ेगा, समझाना पड़ेगा. So all the mothers and the parents who have teenage kids, कितने पापड़ बेलने पड़ते हैं ना. ये ट्राई करो, वो नहीं चलेगा तो ये ट्राई करो, ऐसे करो, okay, encourage them in this way, that way, somehow, ये ना ते ना, just रोज, every day is a new day.
and nothing worse than they get rejected by the teacher which they get.
Yes, yeah.
But Prabhuji, I mean, so many philosophies, then we cut this, yours is wrong, and ultimately everything was set up by the Lord itself. So much confusion is there. And then we have to find a right way, that this is the
Prabhu ki Maya. What to do? what to do? So
Don't we meet sometimes that maybe the population that time was not that intelligent to understand according to
When they were all scholars?
they were more scholarly at that time.
So the model that we follow in Discover Yourself as Radhakam Prabhu, it progresses this way. First we talk about the scientific basis, then we talk about getting the eyes to see God, then we establish Pratyak, Shanaman and Satnaman, and then we establish the authority of Vedas, and from there we come to soul and then the first one. So that way it seems logical, but then again continuing to this question, it actually feels quite against the odds, because here a person was, after a lot of struggle, made to be brought into the process of bhakti or in some sort of devotion driven by connecting with the Vedas. But now that they are practicing this or they are understanding this, now they are going way behind, and then it takes a longer route to get.
Yeah, so what happens is that this is not where it stops. Okay. There's a progression. Okay, after Shankaracharya, who comes? Yeah, so there are many other Vaishnava Acharyas who come. And there's a gradual unfolding of the real understanding of the scriptures. So it's not that, Shankaracharya came and that was end. After that Ramanujacharya, after that Madhvacharya, after that Mahaprabhu. So there's been a progression. And as we will read, Prabhupada also explains that ultimately this, chanting of the holy names, this is what dispels also, Mayavad influence. So this great benediction of this age is to help get a clearer understanding of the opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and get connected personally to a personal God. So this is all, you could say this is the unfolding of the Lord's Leela. So step by step, we are seeing that there is progression. Even though Kali is raging on one end, but Acharyas are coming, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord himself came. In 1486, that's not so far. And how much he gave. Then, so many Acharyas after, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disappearance. So many powerful Acharyas. And the movement is still continuing.
But there are more people who are easily convinced by the gospel than they know Shankaracharya is wrong, but the other acharyas in this philosophy, why they are not interested? It's a profession. Why is the influence of personalism so strong?
Because the progression is coming in the chronological history of the world, but it is not coming in a devotee, in a person's life so easily.
There is a provision. If you are not doing it, at least you will be in the
First standard, second standard.
And within Bhakti also, there are different philosophies. The major question, like from where we are coming from, whether we were at the margin or we were from the Golok. I mean, so many philosophies are there.
So what to do now? Huh? I'm so happy you said that. That is it. Have you remembered that? Nachu gao bhakta sanghe karo sankirtana Krishna nama upadeshi tar sarvajana Krishna nama upadeshi tar sarvajana. So it's time for that. It's 6:45 and Akash Prabhu is here. So we welcome him by loudly chanting the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So next time you have to come on time because we only covered like 5 or 6 verses today. So we're going very slow. So that means we're going to keep extending the sessions, philosophical sessions. I thought, in 2 sessions we will complete, but it seems now it may take 3, or at the rate we are going, it may take 4. But no problem. So, but are you all clear today of what we discussed? Srila Prabhupada's purports, a little philosophical, but he is giving us such clear understanding. What does it mean Nirakar? What does it mean to have a spiritual body? What are the defects of Mayavad philosophy? So many more are coming up. Today we discussed only 5 purports, but they are like very, very substantial purports that we will discuss in the next session, and maybe 3 or 4 sessions. Okay, so hang in there. Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari. So the devotees who are online, do you have any questions?